You're Mr. Swanson.
I was Pharaoh earlier today. Got to trade around the costume.
When are you gonna? What are you gonna do?
I saw a lot of y'all at the game on Friday. I told you. I was just plugging into your lives on these areas to see my kids. I met Glenn. I met 3 generations of Glenn's family. Glenn, his dad, and his granddad.
You met all 3.
Yeah,
I just saw you.
I didn't know about that. Like that's a student section thing.
Hey, I didn't see you, Mr. Swanson.
She throws out on her name every week. Like, I'm still trying to figure it out. But she can't date when she's 19. So Sayla. I thought you meant Mason, a 12-year-old. Yeah, Sayla and Jaden. Jaden comes up. Let's see. All right, story, and then we'll get going. Sayla's pre-K teacher was Anna Rush, and she moved to Jeff Davis this year. So unfortunately she left the building and all that, so Sayla can't see her. Well, she came to the game because she loves her Baconators, right? She loves all her folks in Bacon County. She's walking up the steps, and Sayla is smitten with this teacher, Mrs. Rush. I mean, she's a wild child for us, her parents. And then Anna came and sat down in the bleachers, and Sayla was like this. Anyhow, so Anna is with Sayla. And then Jaden, I guess you know Jaden, right? Jaden rolls up the steps, and he'd been sitting with us. His family kind of been around us. He rolls up the steps. He says to Mrs. Rush, adult, right? He goes, "You trying to steal my girl?" About my 5-year-old. So this was also after he told me that Sayla was his Valentine. So man, I got something on my hands with that.
I didn't see you.
So yeah, all that. I'm plugging into your lives. You're meeting my family. Like, welcome to community. It's awesome. If you let me know what the theme is in the future, I'll try to plug into it. But I had no idea about the theme and stuff. But
There's like 4 people without shirts.
Oh yeah, we get in pics. You might be in the picture. You might be in the picture.
Mrs. Swanson.
All right, let's roll. I'm not plugging into like
Someone
that.
almost hit my head with a football.
I did.
Someone almost killed me.
Kids always want the ball. So like if you got the throwouts, my kids are always gonna want
I
that.
stepped in the class this morning. I looked right at Chloe and I said, "Why are you throwing me?"
All right. Hey, welcome to Monday. What's the big to do about this? It's on Wednesday. Yeah, Sam on Thursday. Okay, so it's gonna be. We are all gonna learn the system together. It's gonna be on the computer. We're probably gonna log into it on Wednesday so that we can iron out any concerns. What's that? Illuminate? Yeah, are you familiar with it? Yeah, where? I am not familiar with it. Miss Rozier is, so that's awesome for us. But we're going to do a practice login on Wednesday. I mean, it's not going to be our whole hour. Practice login on Wednesday. Test on Thursday. It is on the computer. I'm just getting your brains ready for it. Okay, it's not writing things down. We got some scratch paper. All the same test taking strategies still apply. But hey, it's a big week for our first unit exam. This is one of our shorter units. Okay, it amounts to 14 days, 14 school days. Our next unit is 20 days, and then we have a 23-dayer. So this was a little bit rapid. It was definitely go, 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 on top of like welcome to school, get to know you, and all that jazz. So I think we're finding the groove. You feel the groove a little bit? I think we're finding the groove. Newcomer Addison, welcome to our classroom. Okay, Addison unfortunately has been working at home this whole time, so she's joining us. We're gonna help her find a groove. And she's gonna fit right into our classroom, and then people are having their onesie-twosie absences, whether it's 5-day, 10-day COVID, or I just have to go to the orthodontist. The answer is the same. Google stinking classroom. Google stinking classroom. Okay, and then I am gonna do a little tutorial at the end of this hour just to show you exactly how to click on something, open with. This is how you can actually type on it, and you can turn it in electronically. So someone give me the 3-minute reminder, and point to Ms. Rozier. And I'll do that at the end of the hour, okay? All right, enough setup. We got to go. So what you should have
here so you can eat the lunchroom.
Oh yeah, and there's that challenge, okay? The attendance challenge, which it's like you guys are here, and then the people we need to be here aren't. But there's an attendance challenge. If you guys don't like eating in my room, which my 4th block hates the fact that you eat in my room because it stinks afterwards, but you don't care if you're my 4th block. There is that school-wide attendance challenge related to 3rd block. So the top percentage 3rd blocks in terms of attendance will get to eat in the lunchroom. So if that, I hope that's a reward for you. So be here or be smart to eat in my room. Right now, the answer is COVID. Only one. Well, one class can adequately space out. Oh my gosh, I got some questions. All right. American Revolution, guys, favorite topic. We're kind of giving it about 2.5 days, but man, it's a whole lot of information you could spend a lifetime studying, and I hope you will. I hope you're curious enough to watch documentaries, plug into movies, be like, that's not right, Hollywood, you didn't get that right. But you got to know the real story so that you can call out Hollywood. I'm going to try to give you some of the real story today. First, I need to give you a mega term. This is not on your notes. It is on your 5 Ws for the week. This is something I probably really could have talked about a couple days previous, but I'm fitting it in right here. This mega term is salutary neglect. Man, there's a college term. Here's what it means. Salutary, just simple, the actual vocab word means beneficial or positive. What this means in terms of the relationship between the colonies and the crown, Addison, if I say crown, I mean all things England, right, the king. So the relationship between the colonies and the crown, the king, basically purposefully neglected some British laws so as to keep a peace between the colonies and the crown, so as to let the colonies produce economically. Basically, he ignored certain taxes. He ignored certain import-export rules as long as the relationship remained positive. As long as the colonies were producing economically, as long as the colonies were allowing the crown to extend its empire into the New World, produce those raw materials that they needed back in England, the king kind of did the little turn a blind eye, if that's a phrase you want to use. The meme kind of sums it up there. You guys do whatever you want, as long as you continue to benefit the empire. So where this changes is following the French and Indian War. The king basically went back on this unofficial agreement. This was not an official agreement that you will ignore your laws. It was something that was happening, but then all of a sudden, bad parenting, really. You ever let your kid, you ever your parents let you do something for so long, like stay up late, eat Cheetos, video games, and then it's like, go to bed, 8 o'clock. You'd be like, whoa, where'd that come from? You let me stay up till midnight, this my whole life, and then now it's like, go to bed at 8 o'clock. That's kind of what it was like. Hey, we're ignoring the rules until we want to enforce them. That defines the change in salutary neglect. And that is a mega reason that the colonies started to get chapped. And what we talked about on Friday, this act and that tax leads to massacres, leads to Boston Massacre, Boston Tea Party, right? The change in the crown's approach to the colonies was a change in salutary neglect. So that is, listen, I'm not Mr. Memorize it for the test. I want you to know it because it's your country's history. But this one, y'all, won't be on the test.
Yeah.
Unit test and EOC, okay? Salutary neglect. So maybe my memes are going to get in there for you. This is one of your 5W vocabs for the week. And I'm going to talk about a study guide that I built for you at the end of the hour as well. So salutary neglect, mega theme. Probably could have talked about it a couple days ago, but I fit it in just now. Moving right along. Now these are on your notes. Strengths of the colonies. So what do you think? What do you know? Everything we've talked about so far, what do you think is a strength that is inside of the colonies when it would come to maybe opposing the British or starting a war?
The weapons.
Determination.
Weapons, Glenn, what'd you say? Determination. How so? They're determined to win. Yeah. Okay, what else? Leaders. What kind of leaders? Experienced or inexperienced? Experienced. Where did they gain experience? Huh? In the military. Yeah, but what military?
British military.
Literally in the British military. Yeah, they gained experience in the British military during what conflict? French and Indian War, which is just about 10 years previous. So we have some experienced, formally trained in European tactics leaders, and their experience comes from on the battlefield just about 7-10 years previous. Good. These are good thoughts. I'm going to show you the stuff here so you can start filling down. Leaders, you mentioned it. A strong leader in George Washington. They were familiar with their land, so it is their home. And with that comes a little bit of determination. Glenn, I like that a lot. They're literally fighting for their home, whereas the British soldiers are just kind of appearing in another part of the empire that's not their home. The colonists, even though they were trained in the open field, shoulder-to-shoulder marching tactics, they also experienced the guerrilla warfare during the French and Indian War, and they were able to see that that was a little bit more useful than the open field tactics. So guerrilla warfare tactics are going to be real important in the Revolutionary War. And then ultimately, I'm jumping, I'm giving you the big package up front. Ultimately, the colonies were able to create an alliance with France, and now you kind of have two countries going up against one country. And in the end, it was an alliance with French that was really pretty pivotal. So here's some mega strengths of the colonies. Hope you got these written down. Well, move on. Let's contrast them. In the military, this is called an enemy analysis, right? I'm always trying to get inside the head of the enemy. So if I'm an American colonist and I want to acknowledge some strengths of the British Army, what are some strengths that I'm gonna say he has? You don't want to say they suck, they're no good, their run game sucks, their pass game sucks, their defense sucks, and then in fact they actually have a good defense. Like, you want to be honest about your opponent, whether it's sports, military, whatever. So if they're being honest about their opponent, what are some strengths of the British Army? Strength in numbers, okay? Also experience, yeah. They've also participated in the French and Indian War, but of course they've also been fighting in Europe, and we even said a little bit in the South Pacific and South America. So their army is well trained. That's actually the first one. What else? What's up? Weapon system. Let me peel that one back a little bit. It's easy to think about the picture that's on the screen and your, like super army and teacher here. What is another component of the military that would benefit the British?
Strength.
What do I always say? Like, what branch of the military do I always make fun of?
Army. Marines.
Air Force.
Beat Navy. Right? As an Army guy, I always want to beat Navy. But in this case, we can acknowledge that the British had the world's strongest Navy at the time. So the college I went to, the Army College, like our big rival was the Naval Academy, the Army-Navy football game in December. So I'm like rabid, beat Navy, and like that football week in December, you're gonna see me bring it all out, even though none of you like will get it or care, but beat Navy. The British had the world's most powerful Navy. Something else is they have lots of money compared to the colonies. Now this is a little double because they're taxing the crap out of the colonies in order to pay for debts. But as an empire, as an entire nation, they definitely have more money than the colonies. So the colonies are, a lot of American soldiers are gonna work for IOUs. They're gonna work for the promise of payment, whereas British soldiers are actually getting paid and getting good food and having good uniforms, all that kind of stuff. So strengths. There's some strengths. Well, now let's talk about the weaknesses. The weaknesses of the colonies. I'm just gonna show it all. I already got my Beat Navy button up there. They had little money, okay, so just to contrast what we just said. Few people, what's that? Give me that.
Oh, it's a note I found under my desk. I'm curious, with like lipstick on it and everything. Read it. I was gonna read it during
I'm
lunch.
passing notes in this class.
I didn't pass it. It was under my desk. I was gonna read it during
Should we
lunch.
read it?
Yes.
So
I found it stuck under my desk.
Look at the front. Look at the front.
Dang. Ooh, I sprayed it too.
Look at the front.
She sprayed it like you said. You think it's a breakup letter?
It looks like it.
Oh, I know what's in it.
I need to stool up.
I'm gonna read this.
It's about 8.
Do it,
Should I read
please.
it?
I'm gonna read it no matter what.
Should we make it go around the school?
Yeah, my handwriting's
No. We shouldn't make this go around the school.
Snap it
Yes.
right now.
Dear KG, who could that be?
King George.
No, who in school is KG? Dear KG, I'm not sure how to start this letter, but I think we need to talk. That's.
Someone in your first block.
I've been thinking about us a lot lately. Things used to be so great. It's like we were MFEO.
I don't want to know what that means.
MFEO. Someone Google that. I don't know. Google. Do kids? Someone said that.
It was your ninth grade class because I found them under my desk.
Made for each other.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. It's like we were made for each other. I mean, everyone said it was perfect. I thought we would be together forever, but things changed. A relationship should be give and take. But recently, you just seem to take. I mean,
Finish.
I mean, you do whatever you want, and you don't ask me about my feelings.
That is literally how Woodford was.
I don't.
Uh-huh.
I don't think you ever took. Hey, I don't think you ever took into consideration my feelings when you made some decisions for us.
Go read these.
So this is so juicy. Some of the things I would like to point out specifically that have me upset in the past few months include.
Shut up and go read this sandwich.
You're always choosing what restaurants we go to eat at. You're always making me feel like I have to hang out with your family, and you're making me feel like I'm always inferior to you.
Because you are.
I've tried to make this work, giving you too many opportunities. Does anyone recognize his handwriting?
Well, who sits here in your first?
I've tried to make this work, giving you too many opportunities to change your ways. And yes, it's true that you have fixed some of our problems, but overall, you just seem to focus on changing the littles. You haven't made any attempts to work on big personality issues. I've been thinking about this for a while, and while I don't want to hurt you, I think it's time we ended this.
He never gets well.
I mean, it's just not going to work. I need some time by myself to see what it's like on my own.
Oh my God.
You are always making me do things you wanted to do, and you never let me have my own voice. I'm sorry things didn't work out, but I gave you time to change, and you didn't. You are the one to blame for this. Sorry, but us is over. Kisses.
I know what that is.
AC.
I know what it is.
What is it, Glenn?
It's a letter from across the world. If I'm not mistaken, my teacher in like 7th grade.
Dear KG.
Did you say a bad word?
Andrew, say it again.
King George. It is legitimately
Dear
from.
KG.
It's the American colony.
Kisses.
I've told you this
George.
like 8 times. in my time.
AC.
It's the American
colonies.
King George.
I'm not sure how to start this, but I think we need to talk.
Literally.
Yeah.
We used to be so, it's like we were made for each other. Everyone said it was perfect. You choose where to eat and make me feel like I have to hang out with your family. And make me feel- I've tried to make this work, giving you so many opportunities. Yes, you have fixed some of our problems, but overall you seem focused on changing the little. You get it?
Did you write this?
That was
Are we there? Did you
Wait,
get it?
little-
You're right. Y'all, sometimes class works. That was.
Did y'all write
Please
that?
don't.
What did you
So
get?
this is the Declaration of Independence,
That literally was perfect.
and this is the ultimate breakup letter, the greatest breakup letter of all time. And if I were to paraphrase the Declaration of Independence into plain speak, and even using language like MFEO, might sound a little bit like that breakup letter. Give it to me. Where's that?
Literally,
Okay.
pick it up.
Might sound a little bit like this. But do you now? Do you now, Glenn?
I thought it
I'm
was a
so
female.
glad you sat there. I'm so glad you found this lipstick thing.
I
I will
was a female.
implore
I thought
you
were
to not
like,
shout
"Don't
forth
make me
talk about
sandwich."
it. Do you now get it?
Did you really write that?
Do you get it?
No, he made his wife
Mine,
find
right?
it. His
It's
wife.
not my perfume.
His wife. read
Oh,
it.
my bad. I didn't mean
Do
to.
you get it? Do you get it? So, hey, little bit out of sequence. Okay, I'm gonna get to the Declaration in a few seconds here, but that was rich, y'all. Thank you for falling for it. I hope you'll never forget it. Natalie's mad.
Yeah, because it was so good, bro. Like, I wanted to be friends with this girl. But now, like, I'm like,
I wouldn't know.
Thank
I
you
was
for
so
this
scared
thing.
to that sandwich already.
Hey, you're watching online. That was excellent. I wish you were in the room because that was awesome. All right. All right. Your stomach hurts. He was that good, wasn't it? Like,
Bro, I brought $2 today because of how hungry I am.
all right. Hey, so a little bit of a formative experience. We're about to talk about the Declaration again, and I just had to take the opportunity since Glenn found it. That was awesome.
Actually, Hunter found
Back
it.
on track. Colonial weaknesses. Few money, few people to serve, a relatively weak small navy, as in no navy, as in beat navy, as in go army, beat navy, right? All right. British weaknesses. Let's pick them apart a little bit. Kind of already said it. They were not as familiar with the land since they are just contracted soldiers coming on over. They're not from here. And then, even though they experienced the French and Indian War, even though they saw the guerrilla tactics, the ambush tactics, live to fight another day, they're still just real bent on this old English style of European open field conflict. So they are rigid to change. They are unwilling to change. And in the end, the tactical difference, that's going to be a big deal. That's going to be a big deal overall. So strengths, weaknesses, we kind of sized each other up. Gentlemen, go to your corners. Come out boxing. Come out boxing. The American Revolution begins at a little place I like to call Lexington. These two towns, Lexington and Concord, are always said together. Best way to describe it is almost like if it was the Battle of Alma and Nichols. Okay, two relative, distinctly different towns. Like you would never say Nichols is exactly the same as Alma, but close enough that two skirmishes could happen in a relatively short amount of time by walking. Okay, about a 7-mile distance. So Lexington and Concord, small towns outside of Boston. Remember, Boston is this hotbed for revolutionary sentiment, the massacre, the Tea Party, the Sons of Liberty. So remember, coming out of the First Continental Congress, one of the resolutions was, hey, colonies, you need to get ready to defend yourselves against the British attack. So that's exactly what the people of Massachusetts and the militia in these small towns had done. They were ready to defend themselves. Well, the British heard about an armory or a weapons storage building in Lexington. And the British were not going to allow this militia to just build up its strength on their watch. They were going to go take these weapons. They were going to go seize the building, take the gunpowder, take the lead balls, take the rifles. They're going to take the supplies away from the colonists. Well, the colonists get word of this, and they start to square up. Basically, they square up in the on the town square, on the town green at Lexington. So what you have, I think I'm going to show you a picture here in a second. What you have are two relatively small groups of soldiers. One for this team and one for that team. One dressed in a uniform, like real spick and span and shiny looking. Others like total hodgepodge, classic National Guard, militia, Minutemen. They were in the fields 10 minutes ago. They got told to get their weapons and show up, and here they are. So the standing army, powerful. The militiamen, farmers with pitchforks, staring at each other across a pretty short distance. Definitely rifle shooting distance. I wonder what's going to happen. So this is obviously an artist's rendition, but a little bit, I just kind of feel like I'm there, man. Kind of feel like I'm there. Town square, red coats, hodgepodge militia. Another artist's rendition shows what, this is one of my favorites. Y'all, I'd go to war with those guys. I'd scrap with those patriots right there. So Nate, you kind of already said it. What happens? You got two guys standing all facing each other. What happens? Sorry, Nate or Tyler, which one of you said it?
Shot heard around the world.
Shot heard around the world. The shot heard around the world. What exactly is that?
I know what it is. It's when someone they was not gonna shoot, and then someone shot, and everyone started shooting.
So both sides were uninterested in getting into a skirmish here. Okay, the British commander. He didn't want to have to use force to accomplish his mission to seize the armory. The colonists, they knew they were flat out outgunned, outmatched, outtrained, outweaponed, all that kind of stuff. Nobody really. It's like an NBA scrap, right? In hockey, they actually punch each other, but in the NBA, it's a whole bunch of bowing ups. Does that work as a sports analogy? It's one of those scraps where people act like they want to fight, but they really don't. Until a single shot rings out from the distance. To this day, it's lost to history who fired that gun. Okay, the British say it wasn't them. The colonists on the town square say it wasn't them. Most likely, probably a farmer off in the distance. Maybe someone who wasn't in the ranks but just kind of wanted to start some trouble or just start the war. Irrelevant. Irregardless, it starts a fight, and this fight starts the war. Now it's called the shot heard around the world because, could the whole world hear this bullet be fired?
Because everybody thought America shot it.
Why is it called the shot heard around the world?
Because everybody thought America shot at British.
No, that's a good thought. Not quite.
It could be someone who dropped a gun and then boom.
Madeline? How's it heard around the world?
Because everybody.
It was silent.
Nobody knew who shot, but they knew somebody shot, so they just said they heard it.
Because some of y'all get real close. Because it kicks off this conflict that has worldwide impact, and all of a sudden, the story of Lexington and Concord is in the newspapers, is in the pamphlets, is being spread around the world. Obviously, not at the pace of social media, but it starts the conflict that gets worldwide attention. So this single shot is significant for starting this conflict that would be heard around the world. Following this battle, we have Paul Revere. No, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Before this battle, a little out of order here, sorry. The famous midnight ride of Paul Revere happens. So it's actually Paul Revere who is responsible for alerting everyone, which makes them assemble onto the town green at Lexington. After Lexington, the British marched just a little bit down the road to Concord, and there's a similar skirmish. Along the way, this is pretty cool. This is the beginning of the guerrilla tactics. Along the way, the British are marching down the road in file, just like this. The colonists are picking them off from the tree line the whole way. The British, this is amazing. The British have so much discipline, they don't break ranks. Like walking, your buddy gets shot, and you're just walking. Your other buddy gets shot, and you're just walking. So in one way, they had a whole lot of discipline. In another way, they weren't doing things that made sense. Like tactically speaking, that's not the right way to win the next fight. It's just walk away from their buddies. That's good. Couple pictures here. Paul Revere's midnight ride. You want to know this little side fact? Sometimes I get sucked into the side facts, and then all of a sudden,
Side fact, when did this happen?
side fact. It wasn't just Paul Revere. There's another man named William Dawes. Guess what? Paul Revere, he actually got detained by the British pretty early into his famous ride. Now, not jailed, not executed, but he was detained. He really didn't get to alert many people on his famous midnight ride. It's actually William Dawes who more successfully accomplished the mission. Red, what'd you say? The British are coming, yeah. So that's the phrase, the British are coming, the British are coming. What he probably more accurately said was the regulars are coming, as in to say not the militia, not just the loyalists, but the regulars, the army is coming. What I'm getting at here is that Paul Revere is famous is because his name is in a poem, and William Dawes' name is not. So there's a famous poem that comes about the story, and it makes Paul Revere into a hero. It leaves out William Dawes, and guess what? That's history. All of a sudden, we look at Paul Revere as the man who did this single-handedly, when in fact there were many other people. So, little side fact there: Paul Revere, the Midnight Ride. He didn't lie, but it's a really good way to think about how accurate are the sources we choose to believe. Are we getting the whole story? Are we getting a nice, tidy story? Just a thought, right? I'm teaching you how to be a historian.
That's just why it's important to do your own research with anything.
All right, this is the point where if Glenn hadn't so awesomely fallen into my trick here, I was going to make sure that we read this. All right, the Declaration of Independence. So remember how you felt about 6 minutes ago. Okay, remember like you wanted to be friends with this chick, and like you actually said no, we're not going to Snapchat this because it's too sensitive. So I was trying to get you to do so. Remember that feeling, right? Remember this little exercise, and never forget like how you felt about this breakup letter. So here is the Declaration of Independence. So the document itself doesn't just appear, okay? It's not quite the same as a breakup note written on a piece of notebook paper. Long process to get to the Declaration. And it starts with a pamphlet called Common Sense, which is authored by a man named Thomas Paine. That's a big name, Thomas Paine, Common Sense. The screen says about 100,000 copies were sold. I actually did a bunch of research over the weekend. I got upwards of 500 million. So definitely a bestseller in its time. Now guys, when we say pamphlet, this is not common sense, but this is what we're talking about, like a pamphlet. Okay, it's kind of like the brochure of its time period, or you might even say like a tweet. They didn't use 140 characters, but this was a short read, and it could be easily distributed, pocketed. A lot of these pamphlets were kind of spicy in nature, so you didn't want to be caught with it, so it's kind of easy to conceal in your pocket. So this is the type of pamphlet we're talking about for Common Sense. The message in it is one of encouraging the colonists to take their destiny into their own hands, and essentially the time is right for revolution. Seize your opportunity now. There's a couple of famous phrases that come out of Common Sense, but the big idea is Thomas Paine, Common Sense, inspired revolutionary sentiment. The Second Continental Congress meets on July 2nd, 1776, and they adopt the resolution. They adopt a resolution which will become the Declaration. It's very interesting that our day of celebration is July 4th and not July 2nd, because all things considered, July 2nd is the day that this document was approved. July 4th is the day that it went public. So maybe you could say that, that's the speed of spreading information, right? You can't just tweet it out. You can't get on the international news and talk to the whole world at once. But July 2nd, document adopted. July 4th, document signed. And, John Hancock puts his name right in the middle. There's all these other signers. Now, not everybody signed on July 4th. Some people were signing up to a month later. But we, of course, what we know is July 4th. We call it America's birthday. We call it Independence Day, even though there are a couple of other days that are also significant, maybe even more significant than July 4th. John Adams, second president of the United States, he wrote to his wife on July 2nd, and he said, "This will be a date which will be celebrated for centuries to come. The shooting of guns, the firing of fireworks." Literally, he says that. July 2nd. He says it of July 2nd. And he was off by a couple days because what we celebrate is July 4th.
But he was right.
I celebrate that.
Here's the liar.
I said this famous phrase that comes from common sense is, "These are the times that try men's souls." You ever heard that phrase before? He was setting the scene. He's like, we're living in a dark period. These are the times that try men's souls. But guess what, colonists? You can do something about that. Take your destiny into your own hands. And
Hey, Joe.
I'm so sorry.
what's up?
When did the shot was around the world happen?
Shot around April 19th, 1771 or 2.
It's an, are they making a movie?
And you make me go back.
I didn't see it.
Is it not up there?
It's a small sound. Are they making a
April 19th, 1775 is the correct answer. April 19th, 1775. Shot heard around the world, Lexington and Concord. I should put that date up there.
I got to ask you a question this time.
What's up?
How did you get your own copy of the thingy?
Of the Declaration?
Yes, sir.
What's the real one? Have you,
Yeah, bro, he's a time
you ever
traveler.
seen National Treasure?
Haven't seen it.
I'm going to steal Declaration.
No.
From the gift shop.
You're a time traveler.
All right,
His
hey,
name is Joe.
let's get through this line. We'll go to the bathroom, okay? Responses to the Declaration. So we love us on 4th of July, right? Like we start buying fireworks a month in advance. All the novelty red, white, and blue T-shirts come out, and I stock up for the rest of the year during that time period, especially after they go on sale, all that kind of stuff, right? So I got some sweet shirts I'm gonna roll out this year. We love us on 4th of July. But at the time, not everybody was on board. The American response was pretty divided. It was almost like the major cities were ready for the rebellion: Philadelphia, Boston, New York. Others, usually the more rural people who just kind of wanted to farm and be left alone, the people who were also making money off of the crops and such right now, they only wanted to support if it didn't conflict with what the king was, the leadership of the king. So you have some people who kind of like what's going on. They're okay with the status quo. They're okay with the leadership that already is there right now, and they're not sure they want to they want to shake things up. They don't want to kick the beehive. Man, why are you going to kick us? Why are you going to bring us into a war when things are fine the way they are right now? That was an attitude. I think that we have a hard time understanding that because we're on the back side of the revolution. We understand how things shook out afterwards. But at the time, you got people who are genuinely like, man, things are fine. Okay, I got food, I got clothing, I got shelter. The king is over there. Like, why are we going to do this? So there wasn't this mega united front across all Americans. And we're going to talk about the two different sides there as well. People who wanted to fight for independence were called patriots, and those who continued to stay use the word here, loyal to the crown were called loyalists. So there's two differences, patriots and loyalists. Another thing here, these colonies started to not see themselves as colonies anymore. We're states, dadgummit. We're states. We're not colonies. We're not of the crown. We're not part of the empire. We are an American nation, and we should treat ourselves as such.
Guns.
This is where try to reference. I try not to reference Hollywood too much, but this is where the movie The Patriot gets a couple scenes really right, especially the assembly scenes where they say that we should behave as a state of South Carolina, not a colony of the king. You got people for joining the revolution. You got people for staying loyal to the crown, and then there is the one character who he's an American colonist, but he actually joins the Redcoats and he ends up burning his own town. You guys know what I'm talking about? Patriot. Toad's gotta watch Patriot. All right.
You gotta watch that today during lunch.
We'll hit the pause button there and go to the bathroom. Well,
And you can show us the scene where hopefully it's his head bashed in.
I thought it was real.
I'm glad. I'm real glad.
Well, I don't care.
I do the weapons they make.
I do it all the time.
I don't care. This one's good. I'm gonna siphon my ring. I don't care.
And the mouse is floated across. It works in my brain. Think of a really good Hollywood film of the Patriot. You really can't. Patriot's 20 years old. So I legit planted that letter.
I'm Richard Branson, and I have a once-in-a-lifetime invitation for you. Would you like to come?
Take that out. Really read the break.
We are about to brave the storm in a skiff made of paper. How it shall end, God only knows. That's a pretty large signature, Johnny. So perhaps George in London can read it without his glasses. All right, step right up, gentlemen. Don't miss your chance to commit treason.
I got this right. This paper is our passport to the gallows. But there's no backing out now. For if we do not hang together, we shall most assuredly hang separately.
Gallows look empty if I don't join in Americans. But if we are arrested now, my name is still on the
Get it? South is right. What am I to do with that embarrassing document? Declaration of Independence. What of it? All men created equal and inalienable rights, life, liberty, and so on and so forth. The other night I was talking with my friend Sinke. How when a member of the mandate encounters a situation where there appears no hope. See, the mandate believed that if what they fought what
Where's she at? Thank you.
Oh, okay, Glenn. It's a staring contest.
Yeah, I might hit that staring contest over again.
What are you at?
You got in the way of my staring contest.
Sorry.
All right, we're about to start talking about all the battles. All the battles. We're gonna try to help you keep them straight in your head with some fun ways to remember them. God!
What? What? How dare you do that? It's a lie.
It's not innocent. It's cause communication with people.
Did you know if you drown a fly and pour table salt, it'll come back to life?
I'm hungry.
All right, how we doing on notes? We got any gaps? Hey, Miss Roser found this clip for us, and so this is not a clip I'm familiar with, which is why it's awesome to have a battle buddy. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and take a watch on this. It's a short one. Let's see what it actually. Maybe like place yourself there. Try to be at the signing of the Declaration, and think about what would be going through your head.
Are you going to
if
play
you
this
knew?
song?
Now think about it. Think about it. Let me set the scene. I got my document here, right? By signing your name to this document, you knew that you were committing treason. It wasn't like, oh, they might be upset at me, or oh, I might get questioned at the local precinct. This was a death warrant. And the men who did this made a choice, not just for themselves, but even for their families, right? To be on the hit list of the British Empire by signing their names to this document.
Because if it didn't work out, then, you know, they were coming for them. Okay, so they wanted them to know they were standing their ground.
That's right. So
And they did business.
let's
They did
put our minds there and think about what would be going through your head at that moment.
Okay, no problem. Listen.
We are about to brave the storm in a skiff made of paper. How shall end? God only knows.
That's a pretty large signature, Johnny. So Fat George in London can read it without his glasses. All right, step right up, gentlemen. Don't miss your chance to commit treason.
I got this right. This paper is our passport to the gallows. But there's no backing out now. For if we do not hang together, we shall most assuredly hang separately.
Gentlemen, forgive me if I don't join the Americans, but if we are arrested now, my name is still the
Okay, so you can see they are doing it in a jokingly manner, but they also are meaning business, okay? And that's exactly the way when we come together in Washington, Congress sits down and things like that to make those decisions.
Show us the song, Mr. Swanson.
They sign. Not everybody agrees, okay? So they're saying whoever agrees with this, let's stand up, let's sign it, let's fight on, okay?
And yes, exactly like that. A bit of a bravado, a bit of a gallows humor, like ha ha ha, we might hang for this. What Benjamin Franklin said, what the character said, if we do not hang together, we will surely hang apart.
That's right.
He's saying like we either in this together, or man, we all gonna die solo and disconnected, and so let's be all in this together. Glenn, I played that song walking in the room, but I'll play it as we go out. Okay, what's up?
Was there anybody there that didn't sign it?
Glenn asked, was there anybody there who didn't sign it? So it was by choice. You know, Glenn, I don't quite have that answer. I don't know if there was a man who decided to not sign it. I'll put it this way, Glenn. We don't remember that person.
I do.
We remember the people who did sign it. And then I'll point out one more thing, we will move on. The very first character you saw, John Hancock, which if I say, give me your John Hancock today, what do I mean? The movie. Your signature. Yeah, that phrase is synonymous with your signature. That's because John Hancock signed at the top, in the middle, and very large. And what his character said in the movie there, that's what it is said that, he actually said, I'm signing it large enough that King George can see it without his glasses. So talk about a brave man who's like, yeah, that's my name. Just make sure you spell it right, Mr. King. So pretty cool clip there.
I know someone who didn't sign it.
Who?
The cameraman.
Joe?
Cameraman. What's Enigma?
All right, so that's the Declaration of Independence. Here's another mega idea, another sheet of paper. I don't have one of these sheets of paper. This is called the Articles of Confederation. Did you know that we had a federal government for 11 years that failed?
I do now.
Did you know that there are presidents before George Washington?
Yes, I do.
They're just not presidents under the Constitution. So we have this form of government. It was kind of an intermediary form of government for 11 years. It's called the Articles of Confederation. There are a lot, and by a lot, I mean a lot, and by a lot, I mean really a lot of problems with the Articles of Confederation. It was very weak. It gave not many powers to the national government, and it kind of turned over a whole lot of powers to the state governments. So from November of 1777 until 1789, so 12 years, our country, or this group of colonies, states, budding states, our country was governed by the Articles of Confederation. When we say George Washington was the first president of the United States, that doesn't mean he became president upon the signing of the Declaration, right? He became president in 1790. We had presidents before then. They were just under this other system called the Articles of Confederation. We don't fully recognize the Articles because it was basically a failed setup, a failed system. So concerns are that it gave the national government the right to wage war and make treaties. Well, that was really necessary in the midst of a revolution. Make war and make treaties with other nations. But the powers it gave to the states were collecting taxes, raising an army, and a variety of other things. I'll try to find an infographic that explains it just a little bit better for us. The mega thing you need to take away is that it could not enforce its own power inside of the states. So in the end, it was very, very, very weak document that wasn't really worth the paper it was written on. It did get us through the war, but it immediately, after the war, and I know we're kind of not there in our conversation yet, but after the war, the number of issues with the Articles of Confederation, you can't even count the number of issues there were. It turned into just an immediate need to have something stronger, which is what we call the Constitution, which is what we'll talk about a little bit later. Hey, candies and whatever, I've been chill with that, but don't make it a thing. Don't make it a problem, right? Okay? Articles of Confederation. So a little bit of a political cartoon. Again, let's see. No president, no executive agencies, no way to tax, no army, no navy, weak foreign policy, no trade. Man, what were we even thinking when we built this document? They were thinking they needed to get through a revolution. Okay? We got to have a baseline of how to govern ourselves, but it's almost like it was supposed to be the first go-round, and as happened, there's going to be another go-round, which we call the Constitution. So, Articles of Confederation, briefly summarize it. If you want to become a constitutional scholar, you'll spend more time studying the Articles of Confederation. All right, let's make a war. Let's wage a war. Let's choose a general. The Second Continental Congress chose the man to lead their army, appointed him as commander-in-chief. His name is George Washington. Wasn't he in our classroom last week? Didn't we hang out with him for a while?
Yeah, the time traveler.
Wasn't that the guy wearing a red coat? How in the world, why are we going to choose this guy that served in the British Army?
How did you know you wasn't there?
Because
You watched the
they
classroom
all
video.
served in the British Army, right? So that's not a big hang-up for them. Here is what was that hang-up. He was from Virginia, whereas most of the patriot fervor at the time was coming from the northern colonies, the New England colonies, Massachusetts, and north of that. Why did they? So these guys, these Sons of Liberty, the Adams brothers, the Madison, the Jefferson, not Jefferson, Virginia. Why did these Sons of Liberty from Boston and from Massachusetts decide on a Virginian to lead the Continental Army?
What's the question?
So at the Continental Congress, which is being held in Philadelphia, and the main patriot fervor at this time, the Sons of Liberty, they're kind of centered in Boston and Massachusetts. What I'm getting at is we got a lot of Northerners who kind of are carrying the votes They could have selected one of their buddies, a northerner, to lead the army. But they chose a southerner, and I'm not using that language like the Civil War, probably don't get confused. But they choose a Virginian to lead the Continental Army. Why didn't they choose one of their buddies? Why did they choose a Virginian? Maybe I haven't said it quite right. To unite the sentiment. If they chose one of their buddies, it would have become a northern conflict. It would have become that thing they're doing in Boston. It would have become those New Englanders trying to separate away from the rest of us. But when they chose a Virginian, now we have northern patriotic fervor, southern patriotic leadership. Aha, we have a united cause. So it's very significant that they chose George Washington, a Virginian, to lead the Continental Army. He takes command in June of 1775. So remember, we're walking towards 1776, which is the Declaration. So he's in command about a full year before the Declaration is signed. Andrew.
How did you know George Washington was here? You wasn't here.
Right? Isn't that confusing? I must have watched the YouTube live stream.
You were friends with him.
He has more. He had experience. Okay, you can even say more experience than anyone else. So it's not like he was a chump. They chose a good commander. He held the troops together despite little food, little supplies. Occasionally they mutinied against him. Okay, not everyone agrees with George Washington. Occasionally he had to deal with personalities, butting heads. The Americans also received support from foreign militaries. Here's a couple names for you, and man, I wish we could spend more time. But a Frenchman named Marquis de Lafayette comes into town, and he helps train troops in the European style. He was actually so committed to the cause that he didn't take a salary, more or less funded himself. He even funded the troops that he was training. Like he funded their salaries and their food. So he was really committed to the cause of liberty, and he wanted to come to America and offer his talents. And then from the Prussians, which is kind of modern day Russia, a man named Baron von Steuben, he does pretty much the same thing. So remember, shot heard around the world. People from all over the world are getting in on this cause for liberty. A little bit extra on Lafayette. Any city named Lafayette or Fayetteville, you got Fayetteville, North Carolina, you got Fayetteville, Arkansas, and a variety of others. They're all named after him. They were named following the Revolution. And Marquis de Lafayette was so significant in our early history that a lot of towns have a Lafayette or Fayetteville namesake because of him. Extra there. All right, military strategies. Remember, we're about to fight the war. About to talk about the battles. About to talk about things that go boom. I know you guys always lean in whenever we talk about blood and guts. So the strategy, first the Americans. They were focusing on a war of attrition. That means wear them down. Hang on longer than they're willing to hang on. The British had to bring supplies from very, very far away. Men, weapons, equipment, across the daggone ocean, right? Andrew, you can move forward if you wish. I tried to get the colors right. I know it's a little iffy. So the British had a very long supply line. So the Americans reasonably could just hang on. Even though they had fewer people, they were struggling on salaries, they were struggling on clothing and weapons and food. If we could just hang on longer than they're willing to hang on, we can win the war. That's called attrition, and that was their big strategy. Another thing is that they were willing to use the guerrilla tactics. They were waging an insurgency from their homelands. They knew where the swamps were, so they could attack from the swamps and disappear back into them. They knew the ridge lines, the tree lines, the small trails that the British didn't know, so they could hang out in the woods, do their ambush attack, fall back into the woods. Another big thing is that they were willing to do this. They weren't bound by this gentlemanly European strategy where we have to just walk at each other. Now, there are some battles that happen like that, but by and large, the British were not willing to do the guerrilla thing, and the Americans were. That's significant. And then another thing is they made an alliance with one of Britain's enemies, which is France. So the fact that they could get a whole other European country on board for the cause of liberty, that's very significant. And that was one of their strategies. It worked. So that sums up the American strategy. Here's the British strategy. They wanted to break the colonies in half by isolating the South from the North. And they really focused on maintaining loyalist support in the South. Again, in the New England colonies, Boston, Massachusetts, Sons of Liberty, Patriotic Fervor, Philadelphia, Liberty Bell, like New England colonies. They got a football team called the Patriots, right? They were not going to cave to the British, British loyalties. But in the South, a little bit more rural, you got the cash crops, you got people that, like I said, they weren't in favor of the Declaration, things are good, let's just leave it the way it is. They tried to nurture that loyalist support in the South, and if they could split South from North, they had a chance of maintaining the colonies, maintaining their influence in the colonies. So that was their big strategy. They were going to blockade ports, which were necessary for receiving goods and supplies. If they owned the port cities, Philadelphia, New York, Charleston, Savannah, then they could cut off the colonies from outside support, outside aid. The colonists would have to rely on things that only grew in the colonies. They'd have to, raid their fellow farms for food, all that kind of stuff. So if they could control the ports, they could control supplies, and supplies equals the army. That was another strategy. And then I already said it, using the loyalists. Back to the Benjamin Franklin quote: "We'll either hang together or we'll hang alone." So if they could kind of create like intra-division, they could fracture the popular sentiment, and they had a chance to take away from, Glenn, you used the word determination earlier. They could take away from the American patriotism, the American determination from within.
And that last bullet you'll have to write down, because by accident, the blockade, the ports prevent, that second bullet was repeated twice. So just write that third little bullet there, glorious to divide and conquer.
Blame my secretary for that one. Scold him. I'm writing a counseling statement. A write-up. Y'all get write-ups? Yeah.
Just write it.
Give him a write-up.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Dead moment.
All right, we good on these words right here? So again, guys, I think part of getting into the groove, I'm trying to reveal the words. I know you guys are really interested in filling out your notes. I'm interested in telling the story. So fill out the notes, and I'm gonna do everything I can to verbalize it, and I'll probably say a whole lot more as well. So I think we're getting into a good place on how to take notes. Little bit extra. I'm certainly not trying to just read words on the screen. So this is the kind of thing where you can take a look at it on Google Classroom after I post it. But of note, I'll highlight one more thing. The Guerrilla Warfare, one of the key players in that, his name was Francis Marion. His nickname was the Swamp Fox. So like I said, they could hide in the swamps, conduct their attack, and fall back into the swamps. That's why he got the nickname the Swamp Fox. I was talking with Addison. She has seen Patriots. So the character in The Patriot, Mel Gibson, he's not named a real person's name. His character's named Benjamin Martin, but he is the character Francis Marion, the real person. So The Patriot is based off of the Swamp Fox, Francis Marion, using the guerrilla tactics, all that kind of stuff. So a little bit extra there.
Did Stretch come out helpful?
All right, Bunker Hill. Bunker Hill is an American loss. Why do we care about it? They lost the battle. The British technically won the battle. It's in it happened just outside of Boston. So if you're to go tour in Boston, you're likely going to add Bunker Hill to your to-do list. What's that? I don't know if there's a military cemetery or not. There's definitely a monument of sorts. It was a British victory, but it's very costly to the British. So even though they took the hill, right? And militarily speaking, you always want to like retain the ground. So the British took the hill. That means they won the battle, but the number of troops it cost them is actually very encouraging to the ramshackle, the roughshod, the upstart colonials. They were like, hey, maybe we can hang with this professional military army. So again, I love this type of picture. Here's the militiamen, like they don't have a single uniform item on. They're bringing their own guns to the fight. They built up this dirt berm trying to protect themselves. And then, of course, they're going to go against the British regulars who are going to march right up the gut to them. Something very iconic happened at this battle. It was an order given to the militiamen. Does anybody know what it is? Kill them all. That'd be a good order, but no. But,
I'm going to ask a question.
Sure.
Imagine you walking down the hill.
Come on, man.
Is that a cannonball in the dirt?
Yeah, possible. Oh yeah, yep, that's cannonball just dunked into the dirt. That's how that worked. Not all of them exploded as designed. All right, here's what happened at Bunker Hill. The American commander gave the order, do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes. Do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes. So what does that mean?
How are they gonna see?
Don't
What does that mean?
Until they get
Think about
closer. Don't
Do not fire.
Fire
Say
until
it
they're
again.
right in
Don't
front
fire
of you.
until they
To get close. How close do you think that is? Like
Well,
face to face. I can see Brayley's whites of her eyes. I can probably get a few more feedbacks.
Can't see mine.
Point is, don't waste your ammunition because the Americans didn't have a lot of it. Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. So for young redcoat Charles Bug-Eyed Bingham, that that was not gonna work out for him very well, was it? This is an old Far Side comic. Come on, guys, it's funny. And here's what I want you to do. On your notes, as we're taking notes, Madeline is going to the next level. I give you these circles here. What I want you to do on this one right here, you're fine, figure it out. I want you to draw eyeballs. And what I'm trying to make for you is something memorable, something kind of that stands out about each of these battles. So for Bunker Hill, draw a pair of eyeballs, draw a big eyeball, draw the phrase whites of their eyes. I want you to remember, do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes. Battle of Bunker Hill. These poor guys on the screen didn't have a chance.
The eyes look uneven, but
No, I'm gonna add eyeballs.
Do not, I knew you figured it out. Do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes. British victory, but very costly, inspired American confidence, and allowed them to continue to recruit, and more people joined the cause. This is actually called the Bunker Hill flag. We did not have an American flag at the time. So this is the flag that was flown by the Colonials at Bunker Hill. And it's just kind of a precursor to the American flag. We do have red, white, and blue. The pine tree was a symbol for strength and resolve. Obviously, it doesn't make our national flag, but there are several early colonial flags that have a variant of a pine tree on it. So just have this in class. I'm always trying to bring it alive for you. So pretty cool, the actual Bunker Hill flag. We show it to a live stream. There's your Bunker Hill flag.
Is there people actually on there?
No.
On the live stream.
No. I'm sure that it's for people who are absent, or if Miss Lee ever wants to see how bad I do in class. All right, moving on. Oh, there it is. Look at that. Bunker Hill is the bloodiest battle of the Revolutionary War. More than 1,000 British soldiers and about 400 Americans were killed. So, in terms of casualties, the British definitely lost. But in terms of gaining the land, they did win. And then there's the Bunker Hill flag, as I just showed you. All right, moving right along. The next, now these 6 battles we're going to talk about, they're not the only battles. There's smaller skirmishes. There's even big campaigns that we're just not going to talk about. These are the big ones that you need to understand. If you want to get into the military history of it, there's a class for you in college. But right now, we're just kind of going fast through the big battles. Next one, Washington crosses the Delaware, a surprise attack on Christmas night, 1776. Merry Christmas, you British guys. Wake up, here comes George Washington. So, George Washington crosses the Delaware River, literally on December 25th, 1776. You can't pause for major holidays when you have an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. Question? Did they sing? Sing. I don't know if they sang. That'd be the Christmas truce. You're referring to the Christmas truce of 1914. What they did. Now this is a wildly inaccurate depiction of what happened that night. Okay, the artist took a whole lot of liberties. They're actually in flat boats, not this it looks like a fishing boat kind of thing. And they probably poled themselves across the river, not row your boat, but they poled the bottom of the river to go across the. There were ice flows, so that's relatively accurate that they had to cross a frozen river. The reason this attack was successful is because the enemy on the other side of the river was celebrating Christmas, and the Americans weren't. So they seized the opportunity to attack the enemy, and they won. It actually, guess what? It wasn't even the British that they attacked. It was German mercenaries called the Hessians, Hessians. I guess it's not on the screen there. Hessians. The British, this is crazy. Like they should be able to defeat these colonials so easily, but they had to recruit additional troops. These Hessians, they didn't care about the cause. They didn't care about the colonies. They just care about their next paycheck. And because of that, they were involved in the war, and obviously some of them died because of that. So for Washington crossing the Delaware and the Battle of Trenton, oh, here it is. After the crossing, he surprise attacks the Hessian mercenaries, and it was a major inspirational victory for the Colonials. So I get my slides in order in my brain here. You guys get the first go round of me teaching U.S. history. Fourth block gets the second go round. So I'm still tinkering with things. So what I want you to do in the circle for the Battle of Trenton, and it's Washington crosses / the Battle of Trenton, those go together. It's the same event. I want you to draw a Christmas tree or anything that's related to Christmas for you, okay? Christmas tree, Christmas ornament.
Where'd you put that
Christmas tree, oh, the pine tree flag? You need an example? It does look like a Christmas tree, doesn't it? You need an example of a Christmas tree? So something that means Christmas, because Washington crossed the Delaware on Christmas 1776.
Okay.
Merry Christmas, you German Hessians. Inspirational victory, it held the cause together, right? Think about, like, next time you're kind of chilly, next time you got a little bit cold in your fingers and your toes, think about the guys that had to cross the river barefoot. Think about the guys that didn't have wool mittens, didn't have a stocking hat, only had a thin cotton shirt. But they did it because they believed in the cause of liberty. They probably were several paychecks behind, several meals behind, or you described like terrible clothing that they had on. Think about those people doing stuff so that you could sit here in America today. That is the type of determination that you can't fabricate. That's the kind of thing that you can't give to the British because they're just professional soldiers doing what they do. Questions? We tracking? Moving on to the Battle of Saratoga. Saratoga. It's actually a series of 2 battles in New York, the fall of 1777. I'm about to show you a map, and I'm going to show you how it all happened. The second battle is what was decisive. And that means like the actual victory that came from the Saratoga campaign. It becomes a major turning point in the war. And that turning point is that it inspires the French to join. Saratoga proved to the French that the Americans are actually capable of winning this thing. Okay, not just some rebel group that isn't worth their time. So because of the victory at Saratoga, the French joined the war. And that makes Saratoga like double, triple, quadruple important overall. I'm going to show this map. I'll go back to these words in just a second. So here's how it actually happened. The British were going to come from 2 different directions. They're actually supposed to meet in Albany. But the Americans get to Saratoga first. So instead of this sandwich thing happening, the fight happens in Saratoga. So you can see the states we're dealing with: New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut. Here's where Washington actually crosses. Here's New York City. You see the whole perspective of the region we're talking about. This is Saratoga, New York, and this is where the fight actually happens. The enemy at Saratoga was Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, and they called him that because he was like one of the hoity-toity, like wears rouge on his cheeks kind of guys. So naturally, George Washington, beat him down. Saratoga is the turning point. I want you to draw a turn arrow in your circle. Turning point, turn arrow. You could draw something like a French flag as well. I know you don't have colors. But a turning point gets the French involved in the war. Super significant because in the end, that was the real tipping point. It was the French Navy blocking off Cornwallis, and I'm getting ahead of myself like I usually do. A turn arrow. A turn arrow. I was trying to think, like, you got your turn blinker in the car, so maybe it's an arrow that's pointing, or you could do like something that's really arcy and swoopy, but it's the turning point of the war. Moving on to Valley Forge. Anybody ever heard of Valley Forge before? So this is a long year for George Washington and his men. We start with the Christmas crossing, December 1776. We roll into Saratoga in the fall. Now we got at the time, armies did not typically fight each other in the wintertime, which makes the Christmas crossing, all the more crazy. They actually, to use the phrase, wintered. They wintered at a particular place until the fighting season came back around, which was when the weather was more favorable. So George Washington wintered the winter of 1777 at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Over 2,000 men died of his, and I should know how many people. Probably about 10,000 plus soldiers. So, a pretty high death rate. And we're not talking from combat. We're talking from the elements, the winter, disease, lack of food, lack of clothing. Literally, they're just tucking in to survive for the winter. There was no enemy. There were no bullets. And still 2,000 of them died. However, surprisingly enough, those who did survive, they roll into the spring and the summer pretty motivated, ready to finish this thing. Okay, like we made it through this hard winter. Let's go on and finish this whole revolution thing. Of note, George Washington stayed with his men at Valley Forge, which was uncommon for commanders to do that at the time. A lot of times, commanders would go back into a more comfortable part of the world, or they would, build a cabin where they could keep themselves nice and cozy. George Washington weathered the winter with his men at Valley Forge. And then another famous painting, I don't have it far on the screen, but George Washington on his knees praying is called Washington's Prayer at Valley Forge. So that comes out of this hard winter. Do we know if that moment actually happened? Probably not exactly as the painting shows it. We do know George Washington was a religious man, a Christian, a Bible reader. So it is pretty reasonable to think that he prayed for his men during their hard winter. In this circle, I want you to draw a snowflake. It's real simple. Right, you get artsy with it, or you can just do the 5 crisscrosses. Draw a snowflake for Valley Forge because it was the winter, very hard winter. All right, we got one more battle to talk about. You guys like drawing pictures?
Yes.
Some of you are doing real good. I think some of you are enjoying it. Oh, Takira, you want more words then? You want more words on the page? All right, the last battle we will talk about is the ultimate battle, the biggest, the largest British surrender, ultimately the end of the war, leads to the end of the war, the Battle of Yorktown. So Yorktown is not a battle as in it happened on one day. It's actually a siege. So it's the siege of Yorktown, Virginia. And it was basically September through October of 1781. Remember, Virginia is considered the South. We have the strategy where the British wanted to try to separate the South from the North. So you have a British commander named Lord Cornwallis, and he is depicted in The Patriot pretty well. He's the guy with the poofiest wig and all the servants and the reddest coat and all that kind of stuff. So Lord Cornwallis, he goes to Yorktown, and he believes it's going to be a reset. He believes he's going to be able to reset his troops and their motivation and their food and their training. Instead, he gets blocked in by, let me show you here. Okay. So here this is Yorktown, Virginia. Washington marches from the north and blocks him in from the land side. And right on cue, the French Navy arrives from the water side and blocks in Cornwallis at Yorktown. So green dots are Continental Army. Red dots are the British Army. Think about the British or the French coming from the sea leads to what I want you to draw in this circle is a surrender flag. Lord Cornwallis has to surrender his army to George Washington and the Continentals. It happens on October 19th, 1781. If you're looking at your 5 Ws, I don't do this very often, but I will give you a hint here. On one of your when boxes says October 19th, 1781. Because it's a pretty important date, right? We don't memorize a whole lot of dates, but this is one that actually ended the war, so that's pretty significant. Go back a slide and say that the French navies arrived in September of 1781. So again, it wasn't a one-day battle. It was a siege, but the surrender happens on October 19th.
You said October 19th.
October 19th, 1781. Is that your birthday or something? No. October 19th, 1781. Make sure I got the rest of it here. So And so something significant about this surrender, remember, upstart, farmers with pitchforks, militia, no uniforms, bad equipment, they bring their own gun to the battle, like some of them might even have a gun, they're literally just using pitchfork. These type of soldiers defeated the Great British Army. Is Lord Cornwallis feeling good about himself or not feeling good about himself? Yeah, he's definitely not feeling good about himself. He actually sends his second in command to the surrender ceremony. So he is so prideful or so embarrassed or so just like, I don't know, all the things. He doesn't attend the surrender ceremony, which is a very ungentlemanly thing to do. He sends his second in command to surrender his sword, which is the way you surrender, to George Washington. Washington, being the better man, receives the sword, right? Doesn't make us think about it that the General Cornwallis isn't there. So it's kind of significant that Lord Cornwallis didn't show up to the surrender ceremony itself. Speaks to his character and his pride and, you know, all the English gentleman sense of honor and all that kind of stuff. But a takeaway is that Cornwallis was in the South trying to divide the Southern colonies. Remember that? That's a major part of the strategy. All right, I kind of jumped slides a little bit here. Does anybody need to see anything else on this one? So October 19th, 1781, this is the surrender at Yorktown. There are a couple more things to tidy up, but for all intents and purposes, this is the end of the war. But we don't just end the war on the battlefield. We end wars in diplomacy rooms. We end wars with treaties. So Benjamin Franklin, John Jay, that's a famous founding father's name, and a couple others, they go to Paris to negotiate a treaty that's going to become called the Treaty of Paris. Have we heard that before?
Yes, we saw.
Remember I told you we're going to have a lot of treaties of Parises. Benjamin Franklin, just a little bit of a side pull out, was greatly respected by French. He would later become the American ambassador to France. He actually spent a lot of his time in France. He's just seen as a gentleman, but also, of course, we know he's an inventor. We know he's creative. We know he's a writer. He's a printer. He's just seen kind of as a modern Renaissance man, and he was able to connect with the French because of that. So he is a key diplomat in a variety of negotiations, but especially this Treaty of Paris, again, of 1783. So we have the Treaty of Paris of 1763, the Treaty of Paris of 1783, and you know, I'm not going to confuse your brain, but we are going to have another Treaty of Paris about 100 years from now as well. So keep your Parises straight. We're at 2 of them so far. Here's what we get out of the Treaty of Paris. The Americans could finally, they could extend past the Appalachian Mountains. They can now go all the way to the Mississippi River. Captured slaves would be returned. They can fish the waters of British Canada, so that's kind of significant for commerce. And then most of all, the U.S. is a free and independent nation, right? They're no longer colonists. They're no longer a part of an empire. They are what they set out to become, free and independent. Here's a big summary. Let's wrap it up. So how was the war won? The variety of advantages we talked about early on are essentially what ends up winning the war. Home field advantage. That's to say that they knew the terrain, they knew the creeks, they knew the swamps, they knew everything about it. Hey, can I bring you to some current event? Have you caught the idea that Afghanistan essentially has become a lost war? The Americans left Afghanistan this weekend, and the Taliban basically stormed right through Afghanistan and overtook everything that we were part of for the past 20 years. I tell you, I'll shoot you real straight. I got a lot of friends who are really in their fields on Facebook. There's some people who obviously lost their lives there, left their body parts there, just lost their, left part of their sanity, or at least part of themselves there. I spent 9 months in Afghanistan. I feel like I was a part of the contribution, but I really don't know. This is the point I'm trying to make, right? I'm not trying to get too far down a rabbit hole, but the same thing applied in Afghanistan. The local fighters knew everything about their land. When I was there, guys, I was trying to figure it out, and I was gone in 9 months. They spent their whole lives there, so home field advantage. Knowledge of the terrain. Glenn, you already said it, determination. There it is again, motivation for the cause. Civilian support. I'll go kind of both ways on that one because there were the loyalists. Great leadership, and then ultimately, like a mega deal, was help from elsewhere, help from France and Spain. You have the Prussians, remember, Baron von Steuben. So here's the big result. The United States wins the war and becomes an independent nation. Awesome. Well, now we have the distinct privilege of governing ourselves. So how are we going to do that? Will we survive? What do you think?
No, we don't.
Remember, we're hanging out with the Articles of Confederation, right? We are pre-declaration at this, or pre-constitution, and we've identified a couple of weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation. So what I hope you will do is hang around and see how the rest of the story unfolds the rest of this week. Pause button. Okay, that concludes my lecture. That concludes our conversation today. I got something for you. Can I give you something?
Is it lunch?
Take a seat, man. Take a seat. Listen, I'm gonna give you a piece of myself here, okay? This is what I hope you'll take out of this next thing I'm gonna tell you. I spent this weekend. I built a study guide for you, and I stayed up till 2 a.m. 2 nights in a row, building this thing for you. And what I want you to take out of that is, man, this guy cares about it. He's here for it. He's trying. He's trying to summarize the information. He wants me to do well. He wants me to know my country's history. Swanson's here for it. I'm gonna be here for him. Right? They're showing up for me. They're showing up for me. I'm going to show up for them. So it is 6 pages. That means front and back. But what I've done is illustrate some key points. More than even just like we throw it on the screen and I ask you to draw photo, pictures, all that. I've illustrated some points in a way that I hope to make it super memorable for you. You will, if you really look at it, you'll see we haven't talked about a couple things yet. And that's because we still have a couple days to go. But you have a part of your binder that says study guides. Well, this is study guide numero, unit 1. Okay, your unit 1 study guide. Guys, I hope you will dig into this. I hope you will browse it. I hope you will let the colors draw your eyes to certain key facts. I hope you'll let the pictures become descriptive for you. And, if nothing else, I hope you'll cram with it on Wednesday night because this will probably help you on our unit 1 exam. Okay, so that's the one big thing I'm giving you right there. Do not lose this. Color printing is not free, and so the fact that the school printed it in color for us is pretty dope. Let's say that. Pretty lit, pretty gas. That works. Pretty five. Pretty five. We got it color printed in color. And then one more thing here, guys. Okay, I want to educate us. I'll make sure we're tracking on Google Classroom. Okay.
What is it like that?
And Addison, this would be kind of a key learn point for you as well.
Have you had anybody turn in the way you asked them to turn in? Because they it's a simple way.
Yeah, I'm just like. I gotta check. Okay, check it out. And Addison in particular, here's a little tutorial for you. So you'll see when I make a post. The first thing I'm going to put is the mega theme, okay, the topic of the day. I don't do a whole lot of, hey, y'all, how's it going? Just checking in on Thursday night. Like, I don't do a lot of fluffy talk. I'm going to send you the information you need, okay? If we have absent students, I may give them some specific information. But guess what? Madeline's phone. Come on, it's my turn. Secure a phone. Whether you're absent for 5 days at a time because you got told to be, or like you have your orthodontist appointment, you're gone for 1 day, our answer is going to be the same thing. Google Classroom. That's Google Classroom. You got it on your phones. Like, I know we all have different computers at home, or we do or don't have the, like, if it's a concern, bring it up. But literally no one has brought it up. So I'm rolling with the idea that you guys know how to do Google Classroom. I am going to teach you a few things here. So boom, there's the topic. I may give you a few instructions, tell you what to watch. Occasionally there's some YouTube videos that become helpful. Here's how you actually open a document, okay? PowerPoint, double click. It opens up, and this is a preview. Now, for you guys, a lot of you probably good with the preview. You don't get the animations that I'm obsessed with putting into the slides, but you could probably make it work with the preview. Now that said, if you want to open it in its original form, open with, and depending on what type of computer you have, you're probably going to click something like Google Slides. If you're rocking the Google platform, Google Chrome as a browser, you can open Google Slides. And it's gonna buffer for a second, but it's gonna open in this format right here. Now, occasionally you won't get this preview. And Addison, I think this is what you were referencing. Sometimes a file is too large to give a preview. I'm not a tech guy. I don't know what the threshold is, 25 kilojoules or something like that. But if it's too large to give you a preview, it's going to say preview not available. But you still have this open with option. So Addison, I think what you probably did was not go to the open with. And granted, it didn't give you a preview, but you can still open it with, and voila, bada bing, bada boom, we have this. If you really want to go extra, if you want to save it on your desktop, download PowerPoint version, and you can put it on your own desktop. So now you have Swanson slides for your grandkids, right? All right, that's the slides version. Now let's say it's a document. This is really important. Let's say it's a document I want you to actually turn in. Same concept here. Open with Google Docs. Listen right here. And you can, at this point, you can type on it yourself. Okay? So for those of you who don't have a printer, you don't have a paper copy, whatever the case may be, paper copy not necessary. You can type right onto it. Save as Tyler Thomas, causes notes, email to Mr. Swanson. There is a turn-in method inside of the classroom that I'm trying to get better at. Okay, Miss Roger is trying to teach me a little bit how to be better at it. You have something to say, or are you doing it? Well, come on, knucklehead.
No.
Okay, so other than everyone being drawn in by his bloody nose, do we understand what I'm trying to describe here? You can type on the document. I would ask of you, don't just make it a plagiarism thing. Now for notes, that's following along, but if it's something that has a free response, be a good person and don't do plagiarism. But that's a different topic for a different day, right? Have integrity. So there we have it. Do we feel a little bit more versed in Google Classroom? A little bit more versed?
Now, what if that was an assignment to turn in? You
It
guys gonna show them that, Mr.
Yes, I
Swanson?
can do that. So if it's an assignment to turn in, I think I have to create my assignment, right?
You do.
So
Like you would click create assignment, and then we would put the title, blah, blah, blah. We would input that, and then on your end, it would say that you have an assignment due. And then over in the right-hand corner, it would have like upload, so then you can upload your document or your PowerPoint or whatever you had going, and then submit it, okay? And then it'll come to us, yes.
Andrew, go ahead.
Question?
Now, I'm not going to frequently